I switched the agenda around a little bit so that we could get the information that we missed in the first session. And in the first session, we were supposed to talk about the employer needs benefits analysis. And I wanted to make sure you all got that.
Rebecca?
Abby, you are breaking sometimes.
Yeah, she's having audio issues.
Yeah.
Right. Keep the PowerPoint up. I'm going to turn off the sound and I'm going to find the call-in number and call in. This is like ridiculous. I totally apologize to everyone. I have no idea what is going on. Wait, let me see. Let me see rooms. Okay.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear
Yes.
me?
Now we can hear you. Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you.
Now I got to get back on to see. Hold on. Okay, so you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, hopefully that'll stay. So as I was saying, I think the employer's needs analysis is one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. It allows you to negotiate a job. And as we've already learned that customized employment requires us to negotiate with an employer. So what it allows you to do is it bundles tasks that the employer needs done that align with the job seeker's contributions and conditions and what the employer needs. So it creates an equal balance for both the employer and the employee. Okay. It also allows the employer to know why the job seeker is a good match for that job. The other benefit to it is that it helps employers rethink how they hire people. Traditionally, employers have not thought about tasks, but what a benefit needs analysis allows an employer to do is really break their work down in terms of tasks. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay. We all know that employers currently are looking at their business from a different perspective, and we know that we can help them expand that perspective. How can we help employers expand that perspective of looking at things differently? One super obvious way. Aren't we asking them to consider a population they haven't considered before in hiring? Isn't that a way of having them look at things really differently? And can you guys still hear me? Now I'm getting paranoid.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, because nobody's talking to me. It's the ability to look at workflow in terms of tasks. Usually we look at the finished product. Usually we don't break it down into tasks. And what a benefit needs analysis does is it allows the employer to look at things in terms of tasks. And by looking at things in terms of tasks, you can start to identify the unmet needs. You can see where the problem is. When you look at the whole gestalt, it becomes difficult to see where the problem is. And by identifying that, it allows you to see what tasks your person wants to do that can be in alignment with what the employer needs. Okay. And being able to identify tasks that your job seeker can perform brings total value to the business in the workplace. All of a sudden, they're looked at as somebody who does a really good job, as opposed to, well, that person we hired with a disability. So it brings greater value to the person and in their work and how they're viewed. It also helps managers and HR to start rethinking in terms of tasks that need to be performed, rather than all the requirements they have. And usually those requirements exclude people from applying. Any questions on this slide? Y'all pretty clear on why a benefits needs analysis is important? Okay, once again, I'll take silence as yes. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. You're going to identify tasks that both meet the employer's needs or unmet needs, that meet the job seeker's conditions, interests, and contributions. How many people have placed somebody on a job that really can do the job perfectly, but the environment doesn't meet the conditions they need? And so the person ends up leaving. This allows to ensure that not only do the tasks fit who the person is, but the environment of the culture fits who the person is. So then it's a solid match. It also results in you having a concrete document that you can use to create a job description with the employer. And we've talked about in the past the importance of ensuring that you have stuff in writing. Okay. It ensures, I already said this, but it ensures that the culture and the demands of the workplace are right for your person. It also allows you, excuse me, to know what needs to be negotiated, because we know in customized employment, there isn't anyone that's going to walk into a job and not require negotiation. They're going to require a job that's tailor-made to them. And this allows you to know what you're going to need to negotiate, so that job is tailor-made to the person and meets the employer's needs. Any questions on that? Okay, then can I have the next slide, please? Okay. It is part of the puzzle in helping a person with a disability fit into the unique workplace, because we know every workplace is unique. And this helps us by having all this information, by having looked at the environment, of having done the tasks, seen the task. We can start knowing how that person will fit into the environment and if it's a good match. It also, the tasks, if you align the task to when a person is at their best, then it fits. Then they're a great match. It also allows us to match people's skills to the tasks the supervisor needs done, because we all know there's tasks within job duties that aren't going to match what your person, the strengths your person brings to the table. By having this, you're able to negotiate for those strengths, and it aligns with the task that needs to be done. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so what you're looking for, you are looking for unmet needs. Give me an example of an unmet need from your workplace. What's something in your workplace that is an unmet need?
And this may not be what you're looking for, but we need a receptionist to, like,
Okay.
to all doors lock and this thing called COVID. I don't know if that's what you
Yeah, of
call
course.
it.
So that's an unmet need. What would happen to your business if you had a receptionist? How would it help you?
Well, we would. I mean, the people that are covering the door now could do other stuff, the jobs that they are supposed to do.
Yeah, so it'd be more profitable because
Mm.
people are doing what they're supposed to do as opposed to pensioning as a receptionist. That's exactly right. And if we take it to customized employment, you may have somebody that can greet people, but maybe they can't do some of the other components of a receptionist. So you see this unmet need. So then you can negotiate for their job to be greeting people when they come in and letting somebody know that they're there. So that's only a portion of what a receptionist usually does. So that's a perfect example, Richard. Can anybody else give me an example from their workplace?
We have some right now we've got our front office staff that are kind of doing a little bit of general cleaning
Okay.
because we don't have anybody here any longer that does the day-to-day cleaning stuff, like clean the
Right.
bathrooms once a day, whatever. So we've got front office staff that are rotating doing that.
Right. And so it would probably be far more beneficial for your business and your place of work if there was somebody that did the cleaning.
Absolutely.
So that's when you go to a business, that's what you're looking for. You're focusing on tasks that need to get done, but aren't getting done, or they're getting done by somebody else. And it would be more profitable for a business if a person actually did that task. There's also tasks better performed by others. And this area focuses on jobs that might be better performed as somebody at a lower pay level. It's almost like probably if we go back to your front office staff and they're also cleaning,
hmm
probably you get paid more for being a front office staff than you would be paid for being a janitor. And so I'm going to go in the other room because I'm afraid there's too much background noise here. So that might be a reason why somebody would say, yeah, this makes sense. Okay, so you will see a lot of, when you go into a business, particularly now, because people are understaffed, people are doing multiple tasks that aren't related to what they were hired for. And what does that lead to? Usually it leads to frustration. Usually it leads to unhappy workers because they're not doing what they thought they were going to be doing when they got hired, but they're pitch hitting. So you will see this all the time. You will see that there are tasks that would be better performed by somebody other than who's performing it. It's either due to their level of skill or it's due to their pay level, but you see that in almost every business you go in. And then there are.
Hey, Abby, can I ask you a question and give you a little bit of pushback and see you respond? In Vermont, I agree with you, but how do we get away? Have you ever heard of the 3 F's in employment? Food, filth, fashion, and food. How do we get away from stereotypical jobs for persons with disabilities?
I think you do it in a couple different ways.
Okay.
I think you let the person, because one of the reasons, at least in customized employment, the reason you do discovery is to learn when the person's at their best. And so you let that drive the employers you talk to, which usually gives you a different host of providers. Usually it's not just fast food. or janitorial, or usually it's a wider array. So that's one way. The other way is when you look at a task, so let's say you go into someplace we typically go to, okay? You go into retail because retail's easy to get into. You can just walk straight into retail. You look for tasks that align with your person. That I always use the rule that it's 80-20. I look for 80% of the tasks that a person can do, and 20% that's a stretch. So the stretch is going to mean that they're going to be able to be promoted over time, and I can negotiate a higher wage. So if you're in an environment that we're usually in, or frequently, you know, then you look for tasks that are different. You look for tasks that the employer needs done, but allows the person to have more pay and allows for advancement. But I really, Richard, I really think the key is the employers you go and talk to. So you go into businesses, you go into manufacturing, you go into cleaners, you go into different places. So there's different tasks and different opportunities for people. I don't know. Does that answer your question, Richard? Okay. Okay. You're also going to look for tasks that can enhance the workplace, that there's a need for additional productivity in a certain task, and you may have a job seeker that matches those competencies. Usually when you do that, that is a task that happens sporadically. So they have a big mass mailing and they need help for the mass mailing, and so your person, you may identify tasks there, but then your negotiation with the employer is, I am really looking for a permanent position for this person. So what are the other tasks I should be looking for that you have a need in, as opposed to just placing somebody, you know, once a month to help with the mailing? People probably need more employment than that. Questions, comments? Okay, can I have the next slide, please? Okay. So why do employers see you? Why would they allow you to do a benefit needs analysis? Why would they do that?
They may recognize that they have some hiring needs, and so again, they see that you could bring a benefit by evaluating, you know, how they could shuffle things around and bring someone in to help with some much needed work.
That's exactly right, Megan. They realize the only reason an employer will see you is if they believe you're bringing something to the table. They understand they have a need, and they will see you because of that, and they think you can address that need. Some things that you're going to want to think about is, how does the business view itself? You know, and how do you know that? How do you know how a business views themselves? What do you look for to learn that?
Maybe the attitudes of the employees, or
Yeah, yeah, if you have an opportunity to talk to employees that work there, that certainly will give you good input. Also, you can, you know, you can Google them. You can see what their mission statement is. You can see what they put out in the world. That will give you an indication of how they view themselves. How they view themselves doesn't mean that's how they are, but it gives you a sense. You also need to think about, what liabilities might you bring to the table? And what do I mean by that? Well, just as you all have attitudes and thoughts about the business community and their attitudes towards disabilities, do you think the business community might have some attitudes about Us? About private nonprofits, about disabilities? Do you think it might be a liability just from the organization you work for? And they might just decide, those people they serve are just going to take too much time. What might be some other liabilities you bring to the table?
Some places might have, I don't know, confidential information, and that you really, like if you're trying to do a benefit needs analysis, like they might have things that you can't access or can't view, and so they might worry about confidentiality with the things they're working on.
They may worry about confidentiality. They may worry that actually you're not, I went one time to do a benefit needs analysis with the stadium that in King County. And at the time, the stadium was having all kinds of trouble. They had hired a lot of illegal immigrants. And when I showed up to do a benefit needs analysis, who do you think they thought I was? They thought I was from the INS. They thought I was there to check out and go see who their workers were. And I sat in their lobby for a very long time until I asked them, where do you think I'm from? And then it got cleared up. So sometimes people think it may be confidentiality, or maybe you want to talk to one person, the CEO, who agreed to it, and then the information kind of didn't get passed down, and you show up, and so they're suspicious. They think you're there to see what's wrong with how they're running their office or their business. So always be really clear on why you're there and who authorized it, because you're probably talking not to the person who authorized it, but to somebody else. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, so if we think about customized job development, we want to think about the attitudes we hold about businesses. So give me some negative attitudes you hold about business. Give me at least one. This really isn't going to work if everybody's quiet.
I don't know if this is what you mean, Abby, but one of the concerns that I notice in, well, issues or whatever that I'm noticing here is, excuse me, industrial work, factories or such, that they have a full-time schedule and that they don't part with that. So, that gets me to have a little bit of a negative attitude towards that whole industry of employers. That whole,
yeah, I mean, that's perfect. There's an awful lot of employers that believe their job is written in concrete. They believe there is no negotiation because the whole world will fall apart if we break up the tasks, if we break up the hours, so being inflexible is an attitude that is frequent. It's a negative attitude I hold about business. So let's take that being inflexible and turn it to neutral. What could be neutral in terms of a business being inflexible?
Examining the tasks that everyone in the organization or company is required to do.
Okay, so one way to make it neutral is to think about what are all the tasks and where is there flexibility, as opposed to just going down the rabbit hole of our schedules are set in stone. What could be a positive in terms of a business being inflexible? What's the positiveness about that?
When it's in this specific case with construction, or kind of like manufacturing, or kind of some of those roles, just that they maybe take safety and kind of having the proper training very seriously. And so maybe it's kind of coming from the lens of, if this person can be trained up on some of these skills, you know, could we work with you to invest in some training so that they can be, you know, so that they can be equipped with the skills for the job. So maybe it's coming from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Megan, and I think that's totally true. And the whole reason I want you guys to think about this is if we just view the negative, then we get stuck in a losing argument. If I'm talking to April, who says there's no flexibility in our schedule, then I have no place to go if I start arguing her with that. As opposed to if I say, yeah, well, tell me why that is. Is it related to a safety concern? Is it related to how you get your products out? So the more that I can just come at it from a neutral attitude to understand, the easier for me to turn it into a positive, or into at least where we can work together. Does that make sense to folks? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Somebody's-
no, this is Lisa. I was just gonna say, it's maybe with them not being flexible, that helps them meet their deadlines,
Yeah.
or maybe they don't get paid, maybe they don't get paid if they don't meet their deadlines, or they don't get their full pay, you know. So I mean, I don't, different construction things do different, but I know a lot of things
Right.
depend on deadlines.
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
absolutely right. So
And if
if we
they're too flexible, they're not going to meet those deadlines.
yeah, then they're not going to be in business.
Yeah.
So if we can not go down the path of if they say we can't change our schedule, if we can just say, tell me about that. Tell me what it is that is important about meeting the schedule. Is it the deadlines? Is it your reimbursement? If we can understand more, then we can, one, help them think about, would this work for them or not? The other thing it does is, remember earlier we talked about liabilities. Well, one big liability we bring to the table is they think you just want to place your person. You don't understand our business. And all of a sudden you think you have somebody that's a match. If we seek to understand, then all of a sudden our credibility goes up. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? I really, really want to stress that when you're job developing, it's really, really important that you really think about what your attitudes are and what your triggers are to thinking that a business isn't going to work with you, or thinking they're just being jerks by saying, no, we can't. And really look, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes the business is absolutely right. What you're offering does not work for them. But if you ask questions, you can start figuring out what might work for them, or when it's just time to say, okay, thanks for your time. Can you refer me to anybody? Does anybody have any questions on that? Thoughts? Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay. So who are you to an employer? What are the perceptions that the employers have about you? You know, what do you bring to the table that's going to be advantageous to them? I put down some of my ideas on this slide, but I'm really interested in knowing what you all think, that who you are to an employer, what you're bringing to the table that's going to be really good for them.
I think, Miss Abby, that kind of depends on your relationship with the employer. Some employers might find you to be a really good resource, but some might think that it's just a burden that they have to deal with, you know, an individual in our position.
Yeah, so let's dig a little deeper in that, April, because I think you're absolutely right. And certainly people view us as a resource if we've had the opportunity to work with them. Then they can see all the great things we bring to the table. But if this is your first meeting, it's kind of like they're thinking, I've been through this before. Thank you very much. You're going to take up too much of my time. So one thing you're going to want to think about in that is how you position yourself. How you position yourself in terms of what you say, how you give examples of how you've assisted other employers. And you're really going to focus in your first meeting on how you can meet an employer's needs rather than the great person you're representing. Because you've got to somehow put that hook out in terms of why somebody would believe you, want to work with you, how the resources you bring to the table would actually ensure success. So yeah. How about what else do you bring that is going to be beneficial to an employer that you're going to want to make sure they know?
I mean, what can you show? I mean, is there something tangible that you can show them, or is that, because I was thinking like, if you could show them where you've placed 10 people successfully and maybe give them a glimpse into a couple of the success stories, like we placed a candidate A at this place. They've been there 3 years now. Blah, blah, you know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
and
no, I think
they can have a story to go with what you're saying.
I think anytime you can have a story that goes with what you're saying, and you have a story that ties to the business needs,
yeah,
you're in like Flint. Because somebody's going to pay attention to you because you have what they need. So, and the whole reason of talking about this, and you hit the nail on the head, is you want to have those stories in your head beforehand. Maybe you're going to use a concept portfolio, which I think is a great way to go. And if you use the concept portfolio, you weave in pictures of businesses you've worked with and what that person's doing now. Because people love, we've talked about this before, people love stories, people love success. And the more that you can highlight that, the more they're going to want to work with you.
Yeah, I think when you do a story, it kind of puts more of it makes it more not realistic, you know what I'm saying, but it's they have something they can relate to better rather than you just throwing out numbers like, placed 80% of our people, whatever. So
yeah, no, totally. People remember stories. Stories make it real, and stories give the emotional connection. So all of that, anytime you talk to an employer, think about how you're going to weave your stories in. And I also think an employer told me this, and I almost brought tears to my eyes when she said it. I placed a woman at a bank, and it was a tricky placement. The woman I placed had a lot of barriers to employment. But when I went to the employer after the placement, after everything was successful, and I said, Katie, why did you believe me? And she said, Abby, you gave me an opportunity to do something really important, and you really rarely get that opportunity in work. You gave me an opportunity to place somebody who I never, ever would have placed without your support. I mean, I never would have hired without your support. And I thought, wow, that's true. We do that. We provide a service that is really important, not only for the individual we represent, but for the business. Okay.
I think also,
yeah, go ahead.
I would say I piggyback off of what I think what April said. I think also too, as we say, show, don't tell. So I could tell you, I can tell you about this person, but if I can't give you, concrete examples of, their work, how does that really help the employer know what kind of employee they're getting?
That's totally true. And so I think that's why I think the tools of a visual resume and a concept portfolio are so powerful, because they allow you to tell a story. They also show you pictures and shows you visual image or video that allow an employer to really be engaged. We also have great workers. We have people who want to work and who need to work. And I don't think we should ever forget that. I mean, the people that we find good, solid job masks for are excellent workers. There was I think I sent it to you. I don't know if I did. If I didn't, I apologize. But there was a focus group that happened about 5 years ago of large and small employers. And they were nationwide. I think they were in 7 states, and they interviewed employers. And every employer said, which was amazing, large and small employers, every employer said when they hired the person, they were nervous. A year later, it was the best thing they ever did, because it increased motivation and the overall feeling in the business of people were happier in their jobs. And that's pretty powerful. That's a component that an awful lot of people that we place bring to the table. So I just want you to think about who you are in relationship to an employer and how to weave that into when you're talking to employers, because you're offering great things for employers. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, so there's some things that you're going to want to think about in your job development that are really important. And these really aren't really any different than what somebody thinks about when they're interviewing you. Are you trustworthy? Can I trust what you say? Do I believe you? Are you just like a used car salesman telling me a spiel? Can I work with you? Because in the end, that's incredibly important. You're going to be the person that's going to help them figure out what the job tasks are. You're going to be the person that's going to help them figure out how this job would work for their business. So they want to believe that they want to make sure they can work with you. They want to make sure that you're going to deliver what you promised. This I have found in every business. Can you understand and adapt to my unique needs? So there's a balance, there's a dance in terms of building your credibility by talking and showing them other businesses you've worked with. But also keep in mind, every business is unique. Every business is personal. So they don't want to be lumped in with any other business. They want you to understand that they are unique and their needs are unique, and that you'll appreciate that. Also, don't negate the risks. So the employer is going to be thinking about what are the risks. And when they bring up a risk like safety, which most of us are going to roll our eyes at because they're thinking this is a smoke screen, don't negate it. Find out why they think that's a risk. And you're just going to want to think about these. I firmly believe most of these questions, if not all of these questions, are universal. So really think in your job development, how does what you say address these questions? How do you establish that you're believable? How do you establish that you're trustworthy? How do you help them understand that you really can address their unique needs? Now just think about these and think about how the presentation you give addresses these questions. Comments, thoughts? Okay, next slide then. So when we think about risk, it's really important to think about the difference. You know, whose risk is it? Is it the employer's risk? So safety, they may have very high workman's comp. Maybe you can help them by having a task that helps them bring down their workman's comp, like by sweeping the floor so it's not so slippery. Or maybe it's the job seeker's risk. Your job seeker has never worked before, doesn't really believe they can work. This is their first job. And if they lose this job, if this job doesn't work out, it will be devastating to them. So they're taking a huge risk and saying, yeah, I'll work here. Or is it your risk? Is it your agency's risk? But think about whose risk it is, how great it is. Can it be controlled? Are there things that can be put in place to control or decrease the risk? What are they? How are you going to let the employer know about those? Is it reversible? Because some risks are no big deal. They're really reversible. Other risks have really big consequences. So you're going to want to really think that through in your head. And there's a huge difference, and it's really important to understand this. There's a huge difference between risk and uncertainty. Now, with a risk, you can kind of gauge how you'll address it, right? When you're taking a risk, you analyze it in your head and you figure out, yeah, the pros and cons, it's worth it to take this risk. But if you can't figure out what the pros and cons are, you're in uncertainty land. And so if you're in uncertainty land with a risk, you do nothing. Richard may come to me and give me a presentation on customized employment and hiring an individual. And I think it's great, but I don't know enough. I don't know what the risks are. I don't have enough information. So I don't want to say no, because it might be a great opportunity for me, but I certainly don't want to say yes because I can't figure it out. So when you're working with an employer, I can't say yes to you, can't say no to you, they are probably in uncertainty land. And you need to think about what information do you need to provide to the employer to be able to project a successful or a neutral outcome. So you need to ask, what additional information do you need from me? And sometimes it's as simple as saying, here are the pros and cons. From what I know about your business, here's where I think it would be beneficial. From what I know about your business, here's the areas that we will need to figure out and negotiate on, because you're going to need some help with those. And so you give them the information to either decide yes or no. You don't spin it. You give it straight from your perspective of what you think would be best for that employer. Now, I have said to the employers who are on uncertainty land, at this time, I actually am not sure this is a good move for you, because you have so much transition and you're going to be bought out in a couple months. So maybe we should have a conversation again next year when everything settles down. But you need to be really straight with people to help them decide whether they want to go forward or whether they don't. Questions, thoughts on that? Okay. Can I have the next slide? All right. So I want everybody to take a couple minutes, write down on a piece of paper an elevator speech. You got to lead with who you are. You got to be believable. To be believable, you need to use your words and you need to believe in what you're saying. You need to engage the listener. So you've got to start with engaging the listener. Starting engaging the listener, if you say, I do customized employment, they're probably not going to know what you're talking about. So you're not going to be very engaging. So if you say something like, I support employers in I support, I'm a resource for employers in ensuring they make great job matches with their employees. If I'm an employer, all of a sudden I'm interested in how you do that. So I want you to take a minute. Anyway, so it's got to be 3 lines, okay? So I want you to engage. Have your opening sentence be something like engage the employer, an opening sentence be something that's going to engage your listener, whether it's I'm a resource for employers, whether it's I save taxpayers money, whether it is I analyze businesses so they can be more efficient. I don't care what it is, just engage so that it makes the person want to ask you a question. That makes them say, so tell me how you do that. So 3 lines. Have a hook that makes the person want to ask you questions. Be believable. Stay away from jargon, because most of the world really doesn't know customized employment, supported employment, and you want to use it in user-friendly language, because when people understand what you're saying, they tend more to believe you. They tend more to ask questions. Everybody understand the assignment? Everybody happy?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, this is like quick and dirty. Take 3 minutes, 1 minute per line, and just to create something, okay? Okay, 1 more minute, and then we're gonna talk about them. Okay, Who would like to read their statement?
I'll go ahead.
You, April.
I am an advocate for employees and employers by assisting individuals with barriers in obtaining and maintaining employment and meeting the needs of the employers.
Nice, nice. My only suggestion is I would read your first, you're an advocate, read that first sentence.
I am an advocate for employees and employers.
I'd switch it. I'm an advocate for employers to meet their needs and.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, because the reason is if we're doing this and we're using it, you know, we're calling on the phone to get an appointment, whatever, everybody likes it to be about them. So if you always start with the employer, you seem to get a little farther, but really nice job. Okay, who else would like to go, please? We'll wait. April and I will wait you out. I can pick on people. Okay, let me word this differently. Who that did it would like to go?
I can go, but I don't know.
you.
I felt like it was challenging just because we work out of a college program next up. So trying to put a different spin on it. But I said, as if I was introducing myself, my name is Megan Macon and I work with Next Steps at Vanderbilt. We are a college program that works with employers to develop training opportunities for critical staffing needs. I don't know.
Great.
Short.
No, I think that's great. The only thing that I would suggest is give me that first line, the first thing you said.
When I introduced myself?
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't need your name. I need it right after that.
And I work with Next Steps at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I would say, I would put what Next Steps is before you say it's Next Step.
Okay. Okay, so I work with a college program
that helps employers. I forget what you said, but and then say it's called Next Steps.
Okay.
Because if you say kind of what your program is, if you kind of say what you do, you've got my interest. If you say your next step, I'm kind of a little bit zoning out if I'm a rude person. So it's stronger when you say what Next Steps does.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, well, I really appreciate Megan and April. Who next?
All right, I'll go.
Okay, see, it's not so scary.
Okay, so I was I didn't have my name in there, so I didn't know if it's
That's
good
okay.
to lead off
Okay.
with the name or not, but I would say, you know, I'm Lisa and I work with Walton Options for Independent Living, and we work with persons with disabilities to help them become independent, and part of that is by putting them to work. And we work with different employers to see who best matches up with our consumers.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so I'm kind of iffy on. I mean, I got the whole elevator speech part about what my organization does, but you know what I'm saying? I guess it's the second part I was struggling a little bit with.
So read me the second part again, because that's the part that I wanted you to move to the beginning. So
Okay.
read me the second part again.
The part about we work with persons with disabilities.
and
Okay.
yeah.
We work with persons with disabilities to help them gain their independence. One of the components of that, or one of the pieces of that, is by working and helping our consumers go to work, or helping businesses match up with our consumers.
So I think the three things that I would play with in that last time, because I think it's really powerful and it gets my attention that you say you help people be more independent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a really powerful. I think it's also really powerful that you match the individuals to employers who have a need for their skills. So I would play with that, because I think in your statement, those are the hooks that are going to pull people in.
Okay.
You pull me in because you help people become more independent. I'm immediately thinking, well, how do you do that? Aren't people already independent? So it's going to
Yeah.
trigger questions.
Yeah.
You say you match people to meet employers' needs. And it's like, once again, that triggers questions in my mind. Well, don't you just apply for a job and you get it? Those are a lot of opportunities for people to ask you questions. And then you can go into your advocacy and everything else. No, all of it's important. I'm just trying, as I listen to it, it's like, okay, these things, when I think of a statement, I always think about what's going to make people ask me questions, because then I can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Or what's just going to.
And they usually do, once I say we're Center for Independent Living and we work with persons with disabilities to help them regain their independence. And then they usually want to know, what do I mean by that? Or what is,
right? Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of people will take for granted that everyone is independent, and persons with disabilities definitely are not all independent, but want to be. A lot of them do.
Right. So it just gives an opportunity for that discussion. So thank you very much, Lisa. All right. Who else? Who else would like to go? Anybody else? Okay, so here's the deal. What I want you to cross your heart and hope to die and promise. I don't really want you to hope to die. But for those of you who didn't do it, take your statement and read it to somebody you trust and ask them, what do you hear? How can I improve this? What would be the questions you'd ask? And I love this elevator. I took,
Did she freeze?
Did I freeze? Can you hear me? Okay. I learned this elevator speech and having something in your pocket to say when I took a class on basically political advocacy and how you lay the foundation. And one thing they taught you was have a statement ready, whether you run into somebody in a grocery store or whether you're giving a presentation or whether you're calling for an appointment, have something ready. So I think it would be beneficial to you for those of you who didn't do it, or those of you who did, ask somebody you trust. What did they hear? Okay. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. All right, go on. This was when we were going to make you guys work more, but we're not. We're done with the speech. Can I have the next slide? Okay. Yeah, we have enough time. We don't usually think about, or at least I didn't usually think about questions as tools, but I think they can be very strong tools when you're job developing, when you're getting a benefit needs analysis, when you're negotiating the job. And I know you guys didn't do the negotiation exercise last week, but practice it, do it with somebody, because it's a very good exercise to get you feeling really comfortable about negotiating with an employer. But questions are great tools. Questions get people away from being stuck in the mud on their position, and it allows you to kind of move that intransient person over to a conversation. And once you move it over to a conversation, it gives you an opportunity to come to a solution, a compromise between the two of you. Okay. Remember, people love to talk about their business. When you're talking to somebody and they ask you what you do and they're truly interested, you love that, because that's really fun, because you're proud of what you do. And that's true for most businesses. So just remember that rule. Then I just broke questions down into kind of different categories. And there's permission questions. And these are one that create empathy and concern for the other party. Is this a good time to talk? If we go back to our construction people that just want things to be there's no flexibility. They want it to be pretty rigid. You know, if I was talking to them, I might kind of say something to the effect of, wow, is it okay if I ask you, is that hard to pull off in scheduling? Because it seems to me that'd be a tad bit difficult. So, you know, I'm wanting to create empathy there, and I'm asking permission if I can ask that question so that then we can start a conversation. Or you can ask, you know, is this still a good time to talk? There's lots of permission questions, and you can weave that in when you start hitting resistance. Okay. You know, another permission question you can ask with, what you're saying, I'm just a little bit confused. Is it okay if I ask you some more questions about that so I understand? Okay. It's a great tool when you hit resistance. Okay. Ground rule question. You know, those are just basically, all know them. All of us have been in enough meetings in our life to know ground rule questions. But it identifies the parameters. You know, if it's job development and you gave me 20 minutes, I'm going to say, when we talked, you said I had 20 minutes. Does that still work for you? I'm also going to say, probably when the 20 minutes, we're coming up to the 20 minutes, I'm going to go, you know, we agreed to 20 minutes. Would you like me to schedule another appointment with you because we haven't finished the conversation, or would you like to keep going? Okay. There's factual questions. And when you're talking to somebody that's nervous, you're talking to an employer that's nervous, and they're thinking, you know, what does this really mean for me? I tried this once, it didn't work. Go back to factual questions. Because people feel more comfortable answering factual questions. How long have you done this? How long have you been in business? How many employees do you have? Oh, I know those answers. Those are easy peasy. So when somebody's uncomfortable, I have found sometimes when you just start with factual questions, that really helps. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. There's feeling questions, and you're going to want to use these sparingly, but you're going to want to use them because you want to obtain the subjective data that tells you the feelings, the values, the beliefs. So, you know, how would you feel about letting me spend a few hours at your business to learn what you do and see if there's any unmet tasks that perhaps we can assist you with? It's totally a feeling question, because what I'm trying to figure out here is, if you come back to me and you say, well, you know, I think it's pretty cool, but I'm not sure my supervisors are going to go for it. That gives me a ton of information. It helps me plan my next step. It's kind of like, okay, well, would it be useful if we all sat down and talked to your supervisors and had them tell me what their unmet needs are? It gives me a strategy to move forward. Okay. Rating questions, I think, are great. They're my personal favorite. We all use rating questions, you know, the best and the least on a scale of 1 to 10. It helps when you're doing a benefit needs analysis. It helps spot a direction or an opportunity. You know, what's the best place within your business for me to look at on a benefit needs analysis. If you're not doing a benefit needs analysis, rating questions are really, really useful in getting the lay of the land. And they're really useful when you're negotiating a salary for the position. So if you're getting a lay of the land of the business, you know, on a scale to 1 to 5, with 5 being, it makes a really good sense. With 1, it makes no sense. How does the concept of customized employment resonate with you? Would you say it was a 5? Would you say it was a 3? Would you say it was a 1? And then based on their answer, if they're kind of like on a 3 scale or a 2 scale, you know, you're going to want to say, is there anything I could do to bring that up to a 4? Is there any additional information you need? I have found that rating questions feel really safe to people and give you useful information. And reality questions are super important in kind of checking out people's perceptions and their perspective, whether they're being realistic. You know, what support would your company need in order to be successful in customized employment? Absolutely nothing. You just give me that form, I'll fill it out, and I'll let you know the positions or the tasks we have. Well, one, you realize that's not going to work, and two, you realize the person has no gauge of what you just said. So wrapping up a discussion with a reality question gives you useful information on your next steps. So does any of you talkative folks want to venture out and tell me how you would use these questions strategically? In your job development, when would you use a reality question? When would it be most strategic to use a reality question?
I think when you're soliciting the employer's story, like you're trying to check out the perspectives of employers.
Okay.
It's a way for them to be successful.
Yep, I think you're
Yes,
absolutely right. Richard, you'd use a reality question when you really want to get the employer's perception. And so you need to know what the holes are in the information that you've given them so that you can fill those in and so they have enough information to make a decision. Any other thoughts about using questions as a tool and using them strategically? Okay, let's go to the next slide then. Okay, so when the concept portfolio does that for you, but whether you use the concept portfolio or not, you're going to want to outline your presentation when you're working with an employer. You're going to want to introduce yourself. You're going to want to introduce yourself in a way that establishes your credibility. You know, that may be from a referral, it may be fact sheets, it may be a write-up your agency got in the paper, it may be letting them know your website, but you're going to introduce yourself and you're establishing that very beginning, you're establishing your credibility. I know what I'm talking about and I can help you. You want to identify why you're there. If you're doing customized employment, you're there because we match applicant skills with an employer's needs. We do this through a process of customized employment that works with the employer to identify their unmet needs, okay? How do we do what we do? If you're using a portfolio, you're going to explain the negotiations and the support strategies used. You're going to talk to them about a benefit needs analysis. You're going to talk to them about how you do things the way they want them done. So you're going to pay attention to their culture, their instructions, and you're going to explain the tasks and contributions of the people you represent, the tasks they want to do and the contributions they provide to a business. You're going to wrap it up with employers' questions. And I always would like to wrap it up with, tell me what doesn't make sense to you. Because I want to see where I missed in my information to make sure that I give them all the information they need to make a decision. And then you're going to want to close. And hopefully with the close, it's going to be, is it possible to come and have it, or can you provide it now, a tour for me of what you do in this business? Or could I come back and do a benefit needs analysis? Okay. Questions on that? Okay, next slide, please. So, you know, it's very, very important not to be like me when I first started job developing, where I was so nervous, I stuttered and I just looked at my shoes. And I'm sure the first job I got for somebody was out of just total pity for me. But develop a script. Okay, for presenting, whether it's, hopefully you're using a concept portfolio to develop a script for presenting both your concept portfolio and your visual resume, depending on who you're talking to, edit it. Because your concept portfolio for every business probably will not be the same. You're going to want some different examples that are germane to that business. Because if people see images like their business, then all of a sudden they say, oh yeah, we got stuff like that. That would make sense to me. But if all images in your concept portfolio are road construction, and I happen to be a dentist's office, there is no connection in my head of the pictures that you're showing me and of the task I have there. So you're probably going to change it. Okay. You're going to role play your presentation, hopefully by yourself in your office or with somebody you know well that you trust. If you can, when I do job development in person, I break people into groups and have them videotape themselves on their phone presenting. Because seeing yourself present, all of a sudden you realize the different things that you want to change in how you present. And you're going to role play your presentation with a trusted friend that's going to not just say, oh, that's just great, Abby. They're going to say kind of, well, you know, if you switch this, it would be stronger. Okay. Can I have the next slide, please? Closing the meeting, whatever meeting it is, whether it's your first meeting, whether it's one of your last meetings, it's your responsibility. It's not the job. It's not the employer's responsibility. And if it's not your last meeting, it's obviously you're going to want to negotiate a follow-up meeting. And you can say something like, I want to thank you for your time today. It was really informative. If you would like to continue to the next step of the process, you can say without any obligation to hire, because we want to make sure that this fits your needs and fits the person's needs of the person I represent. I would like an opportunity to tour your business and offer you a benefit needs analysis. And this is at no charge to your company. And then when you have time, open. And I can also arrange for you to meet the job seeker at that time, or I can arrange for you to meet the job seeker after the benefit needs analysis and we've identified tasks. So you can see how strong of a match it would be. Questions on that? Okay, can I have the next slide, please? So let's talk about responding to employers' questions. And remember this strategically using questions too in this. First, listen carefully before responding. And I personally feel listening is one of the hardest skills in the world, particularly when you're job developing, because you're just ready to jump in with your answer. So listen carefully before you respond and check. I think you're asking blah, blah, blah. Did I get that right? Gives the employer an opportunity to say, no, you didn't when I was really asking, or yes, you did. This is my concern. Answer questions accurately and honestly. And, you know, make sure your answer at the end of it. Did I answer your question? Double check that you've answered stuff. Don't fake it. If you don't know an answer, say you don't and say you'll find out the answer and get back to them. Don't go on too long. Okay. Answer the question, ask if you've answered it. Does that make sense to them? But don't go on forever, because less is more. You go on forever, that may trigger some other questions in the employer's mind that you necessarily don't want to trigger. So answer their question, double check that you answered it correctly, and move forward. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. Don't confront objections head on. Provide an alternative perspective or ask, tell me a little bit more about that. So then you're sure that you can find the the thread that can provide an alternative perspective that's going to help the employer feel less concerned. You know, you want to use the unique features of customized employment to provide an alternative perspective. Yeah. Well, one thing I'm really concerned about here is safety. So, you know, all this sounds great, but, you know, and I like the task, but I'm still really concerned about safety, and I can't afford my workman's comp to go up. Yeah, I totally understand that. That's why we did the benefit needs analysis. That's why we aligned tasks that the person shined at, to ensure not only was the environment safe, but the person was really productive, or whatever you're going to say, but use customized employment. Agree with an employer's objections if it might be true. You know, I've hired other people with disabilities, and it's worked great for a month, and then all of a sudden they didn't show up. And I was in the same predicament I was before. So you can answer that in a couple different ways. This is, yeah, I can understand why that would be really frustrating, and I can understand why you would be very concerned about that. But that is why we ensure initially that the person has a job coach to make sure everything aligns correctly. And also, there's a lot of work we do with the individuals we serve outside of your place of employment to ensure that they show up, to ensure their transportation is good, to whatever. You're also going to want to say, you know, well, I just thought everybody was taken care of and they were on Social Security, and, you know, they don't need an employment. Well, yeah, that used to be the attitude, and that used to be what people thought. And yeah, that was part of our history, that we thought people couldn't work or shouldn't work. And there's been a great there's been major changes in our field where we realize it's incredibly important for a person's self-esteem, for their self-worth, for their independence, to have employment, just like it is for any other employee. Okay. If there's an objection that you think is either a stall or a test balloon from the employer, check out your response. You know, if an employer is just trying to test you, it's like, well, I thought you said blah, blah. You're going to want to kind of say, tell me more about that, because that isn't how I remember the conversation. But tell me more of what you thought was said, and tell me how you think this could affect employment. So you always just want to stay cool. You always want to just check it out. And the more cool in any objection, because sometimes people will try to throw out triggers to, and the more neutral you can stay, the more positive you can stay, the more you can usually bring the objection around. Questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, can I have the next slide? So this is our last session. I know you guys are brokenhearted. But so I want to know what information was the most useful to you over the last 6 weeks. This is a time you all got to talk.
I think for me it was a refresher on the fundamentals of customized employment again, and how it was a reminder that really employment is for everyone.
Okay, great. Good. Thank you, Richard. Anybody else? Or I will call on you. I can see that puts fear in your heart. So what else was the most useful? And how can you use it?
I think some of today, and just some kind of throughout all the tips in terms of working with employers, is always a really good refresher, and just to kind of think a little bit more creatively on how you approach them. I know sometimes it feels like you can kind of get in a routine and then you feel like you're maybe in a rut with it. And so it's nice to have these refreshers to kind of rethink how we approach or kind of make the pitch to them.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Megan. I also think if you have if you know other people that do job development that aren't in your agency, that, you know, perhaps, I don't know if you already do this, but like having a group of peers that work with employers and just meeting once a quarter and talking to them about what their approaches are can also be really useful, because it is easy to get into a rut, and getting other ideas from other people is really helpful. So Liz said she loved the idea. Liz, can you just say it, because I lost your comment? Let me see if I can get it back.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little sick, so that's why I put in the
Okay.
chat. but
Wait,
I'm-
I got
I'm happy
all.
to.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I loved learning. I'm from Next Steps at Vanderbilt too, so we've
Okay.
split up some of the sessions, but I really, really enjoyed learning about the concept portfolio. I know we shared, but we already do this, but I think you brought a lot of great points of just how we can really market ourselves and be a little bit more creative, and just being more powerful when introducing ourselves to a potential new partner.
Yeah, I think I personally think the concept portfolio is a great tool. And one thing I love about it is you can be phenomenally creative in it, and you can tailor it to your audience. And so, yeah, good. I'm glad, because I think it really is a good tool.
Yeah.
Anything else? People, takeaways?
I can go at kind of bouncing off of Liz. I'm also with Next Steps, and so there were only certain ones that I sat in on.
Right.
I was on the customized employment meeting one, and we similarly kind of already do those with all of our students each semester, but it was really interesting to kind of think through just sort of like different ways to set it up. One thing that kind of we noted, and since we've had that, we've kind of tried to incorporate more in our meetings, is just making sure students can physically see like what we're typing. That's just, it's a small thing, but I think it's
no, that's a big thing.
It's more, focused on them and their goals.
No, I think that's an essential step, because being able to see it makes you part of the deal. And it makes you a full partner. And since it's your life, it's pretty important to be a full partner.
Definitely. Yep.
So I think that's great. Okay, so tell me what didn't work or what you need more information on. If you were ruler of the world, what would you think? Well, if we had more information on this and dropped this out, it would be really good.
This seems, this is Megan with Next Steps, and
yeah,
this is very, very specific to our program, but I think one thing we often run into a challenge of is employers, because we're a college program and many of the students are doing internships as part of our program structure. Some of what we're customizing are the internships, but then as they start to graduate and we start to kind of shift and talk more about customized jobs, we kind of find it harder to get that same buy-in with employers. So just maybe more resources on when you've already got buy-in on one front, how do you then shift it to, okay, now let's take this next step. You've seen the internships, these have been successful now. And I think particularly within the context where we have the most trouble is in with like really large organizations that have like really a lot more complex like HR systems and stuff. You know, we've done a lot of really great internships with our state government here. But that's one where it's a lot harder to customize, or at least that's what we get back from some of the, you know, departments, or just like some large kind of international organizations where we're maybe only partnering with the local Nashville office, but they have to go through all these channels to get things approved. And so that's where I think we run into the most trouble is, and we've had some students and families recently, I think just the idea of job security, I think, you know, they really want to be in a place where they maybe feel like there's some long-term job stability, you know, thinking coming off the heels of the pandemic and such.
Right,
So
right.
we've had more express interest in working in some of those larger companies, but then it's kind of running into a wall with them.
So a couple thoughts I have on that. And okay, I'll tell you my thoughts and then I'll give you some resource suggestions. One thought I have on that is if you do use a concept portfolio, I would put in your concept portfolio your end goal. So I would have some kind of graph or some kind of visual representation of we start with internships, and the reason we start with internships is to give our students exposure, and then at the end of that we move to competitive integrated employment, or we move to employment, paid employment. And I would have like bullet points. The reason we've chosen your company is because of the possibility of long-term job security. And that's something that's very important to some folks we represent. So what I'm wondering, and in the conference, this isn't in your report, I would put something visual in that shows that the end result is employment at that particular business, if that's what it is. And then in the conversation, I would say, or maybe in your concept portfolios, what steps do we need to take now so that when this internship ends, or in 3 years when it ends, whenever it ends, however long, people understand that we're going to need to customize the job. So should we be having conversations, you know, with who's ever in charge, with HR? Would you like me to go and give a presentation now and then in 6 months on what customized employment is and why it's beneficial, and have all your data? But I would let them know from the get-go. So that when you get to that point, it's like, oh no, we're done. It's like, and I assume you pay for the internships?
It depends on the company. I mean, we don't, Next Steps doesn't, it's, you know, by department, but some of our students do use, if a company isn't able to, do use like WIOA funds, like
okay. So I'd be really clear that you're not going to play if there isn't this conversation about the end result, particularly if you're putting money forward, because you're bringing money to the table. And businesses, in my experience, understand money. So that's one thing I would do. And I would look at, and if you redo your portfolio to your concept portfolio to include that, I'm happy to review it if you send it to me. Because I think it's really important you weave that in from the beginning. I would also, if you do a benefit needs analysis and creating the internships, and how long are your internships?
Some are just a semester, but some, you know, have lasted up to a year or 2 years, depending on, you know, the student and the company.
So the longer internships, I would increase in complexity.
Yeah. And we definitely work to have that.
So, and I would point that out because the reason you're increasing in complexity is you want the person hired at the end.
Yeah.
So I would kind of weave all of that stuff in. What I will do is also look, Megan, for some resources for you around rolling rolling internships into permanent employment. And I can't remember the article I read, but I'll look for it. And if I find it, I will send you the link.
Okay, thank you so much.
Is there anything else that people would need more information or like more information on? I think we got 2 minutes left.
Can I chime in real quick? It's
Of course.
Amy. Thanks
ahead.
Abby, for your wonderful work here. I just want to wrap up on a couple of things. The feedback that you folks give to us is so important. So thank you for the verbal feedback that you've given. We'd also like to encourage you through a post-event survey that we created to please click on that link whenever you get a chance and just take a few minutes to give additional feedback. And just to remind you why it's so important to us, because we shape the e-learning communities. We gather content and structure based on your goals and what you tell us that worked and didn't work. So please don't be afraid to share feedback. We'd love to know how we can do better, but we also would love to know how we did great. And so, you know, I personally think Abby did such an excellent job. She has such a depth and breadth of information, you know, but it's also important to know what everybody else thinks and how we can continue facilitating these or improve upon them. Okay, so as we wrap up, I just want to thank Abby for all your work, always reaching out with homework and resources, always thinking about this group, and we're so excited. Sharon, if you can do me a favor and please in this chat, the group should also see the discovery resource that Abby created for us when we first started how to use discovery in conjunction with Centers for Independent Living. So just share that resource, Chairnet, and please folks, click on that link and give us the feedback. So Abby, I just want to take a quick moment to thank you so much for all your hard work. We really enjoy being with you through this, you know, journey, and that we're looking forward to keeping in touch with you and hopefully, you know, working with you again and in this next year.
Okay, well, thank you, Amy. And I want to apologize for all the technical difficulties at the beginning of the webinar. No idea what was going on with my internet, but we worked it out.
Thank you so much, Abby. And thank you everyone for your commitment to this e-learning community. Take care. Have a good one.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.